Hello, my name is Charlotte Halverson. I work with the AgriSafe Network, which is a national network working, putting farmers in our midst of healthcare, and we are absolutely loving it. And sometime I hope to have time to tell you a whole lot more about AgriSafe. But I want to watch the time frame that you all have. You are busy, busy folks. So I would like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about stress and the toll it takes, not only mentally, but on your physical life and your physical work. I'm an occupational health nurse by trade and grew up in a family farm here in Dubuque County, Iowa. So I'm not in Michigan, but I do love any opportunity to go there. You've got a beautiful state, and I am just really in love with what Farm Bureau is doing in Michigan. I grew up on a dairy farm, and some of the first things that I learned about that were integrated into my life were 4-H, Farm Bureau, County Extension. And those were just a huge part of what I got to know well growing up. So it's a pleasure to be kind of back in that saddle again for a while. So as we get into this little next 15-20 minutes or so, I really do understand some of the stressors and the issues that you all are going through in your agricultural arena in Michigan, because here in Iowa, we are in kind of the same boat, maybe different products sometimes, but a lot of the same issues. And what you are experiencing is very personal. It's very much a part of not just your family life, it's your community life, and we certainly understand that. So let's talk a little bit about how these things impact so many different areas of your life. And I'm hoping that my slides move through okay, but I've been told that Kate's back there and she is going to be my protector. So anyway, we're going to talk about stress and some of the tolls it takes. I was not able to listen to all of the presentations so far in this series, but I did sit in and listen on some of them, and I was been very impressed with what the folks have been talking about and how really on target they are with the things that they are discussing with all of you. And so far from what I've seen, you've really been talking about a lot of the stresses in your life and how it really affects your mental wellness, your brain health. A brain is really runs the body. I mean, it's the most important organ you've got to deal with because it is responsible for so many things. So that we need to keep it healthy. I've seen you talk a lot about the signs and symptoms of things like depression and anxiety. And what those warning flags are that are related to the things that can happen when someone is so stressed that you are actually considering doing something harmful to yourself, and even thoughts of death by suicide. You've been looking at how these trends are happening in rural health and how they need your attention. And it's not just in your little community, although that's what impacts you the most, but it's regional, it's statewide, and it's even national. Our AgriSafe network is across multiple states, and we see these same things, different scenarios. But yet it's very, very personal and very local at the same time. I've been very impressed with the opportunities for community training programs that are provided, and the tools that you all have to assist in becoming not just taking care of yourselves, but you're reaching out as a community and being an effective support person for your family, for your friends, for your neighbors, for your coworkers. And that's important. That's such an important part of community. I was really delighted to see this pop up on one of your presentations. I believe it was from Eric that I saw it. I could be mistaken. And it's the 8 dimensions of wellness. And I think this comes from SAMHSA, and it is I think really tells the story in one slide about all the different things that you are working with and dealing with, and how your life is impacted and what that can mean. And it just really, I love this image, and I'm hoping to see more groups and more organizations use it when you're telling the story and have the opportunity to reach out, within your communities. It's well done, and I think it's really a nice way to, if nothing else, start conversations. So when we are talking about stress and how it impacts physical wellness, as you can see by this little picture here, there's hundreds of different words that pop up when somebody talks about stress, because it is very personal and it impacts all of us in a little different way. But one of those things that really we have to deal with every day is our physical wellness, and how does stress really hit us there. One of the big ones, and I know that this has been talked about a little bit in your past presentations, is sleep deprivation, and the value and the importance of good, solid, sound sleep. And when we don't have that, how it just can just mess things up across the board, as far as your ability to focus, your ability to be physically alert, your ability to stay well, and your interactions with family and with the folks that you work with. Stress impacts our ergonomic function. In other words, that's our ability to move around and be pain-free when we're working and driving, walking, climbing, any of those things. If we're stressed out, that really gets impaired in a hurry. Other things that get impaired, or at least somewhat affected, are visual acuity, hearing acuity, diet, nutrition, and then there are things that we'll touch on that you've already talked a little bit about, I'm sure, are substance abuse and how our overall activity altogether is impacted. So let's just spend a minute and review some of the things you probably already talked about when we talk about sleep deprivation, that lack of restorative sleep. And I think every one of us have had this happen to us at some point in time. And for some of us, that happens a lot. And I can tell you personally, I'm one of those folks that if I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't get back to sleep easily. It's just, my mind is just running a race in my head. And this is something I have to work on personally. And I have some stressors going on in my life, but probably not to the degree that a lot of you are dealing with right now, with between weather and COVID and crops coming in and all of that stuff. But this is vital, and I can't emphasize that enough. I wish I had billboards along the road to say how important this is, because if you don't get proper sleep, one of the things that happens, and this is huge in agriculture, is you really increase your risk for injury. And if you have a significant injury, you just think how that impacts not your work, but it impacts your whole farming operation, your family, and to some degree, your community. So that's one of the reasons that we are really big on working on restorative sleep. It obviously affects your cognitive ability. If you aren't getting proper sleep, you're not focusing well on your work. You're not focusing on your driving, and running your equipment, your machinery, those sorts of things. And just doing paperwork. I can't tell you how many times I've been trying to do something for work and I'll miss some of the basic little things when I'm reading. And here it's because I'm tired and I just did not get a good night's sleep. And it just totally disrupts your daily pattern and activity. I'm too lazy to get up and go for a walk. I just tend to want to neglect some of the things that I should be doing around here. But restorative sleep is a huge, huge part of overall physical wellness and your brain health. Musculoskeletal issues, huge. I said that ergonomics was a part of it. And when we are stressed out, we pay for it from head to toe. Stress impacts our whole musculoskeletal system. It changes the way your body responds, and it changes the way the things that you can tolerate. That normally, if your body is in good shape, you can do all kinds of things. If you're stressed out and your back is bothering you, or your shoulders, or your neck, or your knees, it impacts what you can do. That psychological stress really does have a big, huge physiological impact. And one of the first ways you'll notice it, if you really think about it, is muscle tension. Uh, the way you're sitting and you're tensed up. And the reason for that is those increased levels of stress just make all of us work differently. The little examples would be if you doing office work and you're thinking about something and can't let go of it, and it's just really bothering you. Sometimes you're just hitting those computer keys harder, or you're gripping that mouse harder, or if you're out in the shop, you're hanging onto that hammer too tight. Um, how often have you been driving and your grip on the steering wheel is just all of a sudden you can't figure out, my fingers hurt. What's going on here? And it's you're hanging onto that steering wheel so tightly. And I've seen this happen when I've been driving for work, and I've been, all over the state, not with COVID, obviously, but I'd be going down the interstate and I'm thinking, what is going on? Well, I'm thinking about stuff that I can't get a mental grip on. And so therefore I'm gripping everything else. So some of the other results of this tension, these ergonomic tensions throughout our body are, if you ever thought about it, that you clench your teeth, your neck gets really stiff, headaches that you just can't get on top of won't go away, your shoulders tense up, that clenched gut feeling in your stomach, in your abdomen, and it bothers your digestive system. What about that posture, those slump postures, or that super rigid posture, that because you're just so tense? So that's one of the impacts that stress can have there. So how do you counteract all of that? Make yourself take rest breaks. And this is hard for every single one of us to do. We just don't take those little breaks. It's okay, I'm 10 more minutes, 15 minutes. Well, when I get down this row, as soon as I get home, we can make all the excuses in the world, and all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night and we have not stopped for 10 minutes. Hydration. Our body depends on being well lubricated, and we do that through drinking lots of water and healthy beverages. Therefore, caffeine intake and alcohol intake has an impact on that, because, and I can be as guilty as the next person. Instead of that 1 cup of coffee in the morning, all of a sudden I had 3. And then I wonder why I'm so jittery. Doesn't make sense, does it? Breathing exercises. And I know we all hear this and we think, yeah, that's for somebody else. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and do breathing exercises. But I found in working with our farming communities, it works. And it's not just the ladies doing it, you guys. It's you all that are 6'3" and 180, 220 pounds. You get into these breathing exercises, you'll be amazed at what a difference it can make. But it takes work, and you have to be willing to learn how to do it. And we don't have the time to go through a whole lot of that with these presentations, but there are people in your community that can work with you to do it. And I know that. I know that Kate knows where they are. Walking, just going for a walk for a short period of time and making yourself take that time to do it. To me, the biggest emotional brain healer for me is our beautiful rural communities. And just walking through it for a little while can be so restorative, and laugh. I know we've all heard the stories, and you've seen there's all kinds of literature out there about laughter really does help, and it exercises those muscles. and it gets the good cortisol in your brain rolling and all of those things. And then again, a balanced diet. Um, we can't talk enough about eating the right things and not the stuff that you've stuffed in your pocket on the tractor. Um, you can stuff other things in your pocket on the tractor if you just really think about it. I talked to you about exercise and walking and all of this thing. These are some things that here at AgriSafe that we've been able to put together. And this is one of the model in this poster is one of our, it's our community health nurse, Linda, who is a farm operator in Nebraska. And she is a yogi as well. And she's gotten all of, she's a mother of 3 young men. So she's got all the guys in her family doing yoga. And that's another one. You're willing to say it's not too sissy, it works. It takes a while to learn how to do it, but she uses equipment on the farm, and this is what she does with it. And she's taught us how to do it. And we have a occupational therapist that we also work with who has her husband doing things a little differently. She runs a company called Mobile Correctives. And this is her husband doing some stretches, hopping off the tractor, taking a little bit of time. Amazing what 5 minutes, 10 minutes can do just to do a few of these things. Or just to get out, stretch your back, walk around that tractor 3 or 4 times, bend over, touch your knees before you get back in. So we know that this is a huge impact with the ergonomics piece of it. Another thing we don't think about, and I do like to talk about, is how stress can affect some other things. And one of them is your visual acuity, your ability to see, your healthy eyes. And when we have stress, it affects our vision, and that can range from just mild discomfort to something as horrible as vision loss totally. Some of the symptoms you've probably all experienced, I know that I have, are blurred vision. Your eyes just, all of a sudden things are just blurry and you're wondering, do I have something in my eye? Are my glasses dirty? And there's something else. Just clean your glasses more often than they get dirty really easily. Eye twitching, and this has happened, I know it's happened to me, and it's stress related, that eye twitching. And then the dry eyes, or the other side of that is really watery eyes. And what do you do about that? But we do know that with the stress that you are experiencing sometimes, when that happens, it can make an existing condition get even worse. And it impacts, the real deal is when your visual acuity is affected like this, it impacts the safety and how you're working around animals and machinery. And it's kind of a two-sided thing. My little arrow down there is your visual acuity impacts stress. It makes stress even worse when you can't see right, when your eyes are twitching, all of that stuff. And then it flips around and stress makes these things happen. So there's some things that we need to learn how to do. Some of it's real basic stuff. It's wearing safety glasses or goggles that are ANSI approved, wearing tinted safety glasses in the sunlight so you're not squinting like crazy. Using those eye drops to keep your eyes moist. I think a lot of us have a lot of dry eye issues we don't really realize. If you have taking some medications or wear contact lenses, check with your healthcare provider. But there are a lot of really good eye drops on the market that can really help you, and you just need to blink more often. Don't put off those regular eye exams. Our eyes change all the time. And if you have new prescriptions for glasses or contacts, before you're working with your machinery, get out and practice walking around so you avoid tripping. I wear progressive lenses, and when I get my glasses changed, I have to very slowly look down and practice going up and down the steps a little bit so I'm not tripping over my own feet. And again, deep breathing exercises can really have an impact on that eye twitching and that stuff that can happen when you're really stressed out. And some calm music. We've all learned a lot about music therapy over the years and how it impacts a lot of different things. Kate and I were just talking not too long ago about Parkinson's disease, and there's some really great studies about what calm music does in treatment of Parkinson's disease. Stress can affect our hearing, and we don't think that too often, but it truly does. Many of us suffer from tinnitus, that ringing, that chirping that's constantly going on in our ears. And a lot of times that is a result of a lot of noise exposures. And for many of us, we didn't wear hearing protection when we were working on the farm. I didn't wear hearing protection growing up. We didn't know about it. It's a lot of things that we say now that, I wish I would have known. Well, I wish I would have known years ago what the impact that noise can have. But what happens is when you develop this, sometimes it either starts as a result of stress, or the stressors that you've got going on will impact it. And if you suffer from tinnitus, that ringing in your ears, when you're stressed out, I'm sure you notice that it gets even worse. Some people at the point where they say they can't even hear other people talking. That stress produces adrenaline, and that huge adrenaline rush can slow down the circulation in your inner ear, and that can result in hearing loss, sometimes to the point where you don't hear anything. And stress can change the air pressure in your ears. As we don't always think about that, but it's very similar. That stress is very similar to being like changing your elevations. If you go from the plains to the mountains, kind of a thing, or in an airplane when your ears pop, stress can do those very same things to you. So we are saying wear hearing protection that works for you. There's no one kind of hearing protection works for everybody. Get a baseline hearing test so you know where you are as life goes on and work goes on. If there are changes that you can recognize those right away. Are there any areas in your farming operation where you can reduce the noise so it's not such a stressor? Agriculture has a lot of noise, and maybe you can and maybe you can't reduce those noise levels in certain places. If you're working in a noisy environment, again, just like ergonomics, take a break. Get away from that noise for even a couple of minutes. There are great noise canceling headphones and earbuds out there. Maybe they will work in your environment, maybe not. Most farmers tell me that they don't want noise canceling because it's so important that they hear what's going on. But if you have good hearing protection in them, is fitting properly, you can still hear what you need to hear. And again, those deep breathing exercises and some calming music makes a huge difference. You're going to hear me say that a million times. Diet and nutrition. This is the grandma shaking her finger here, kind of a thing. Emotional eaters, which we call stressed out folks. We just tend to eat more those high fat foods, sweet foods, all those things that we shouldn't be eating, and instead of the more healthy foods. It's quicker to grab the things that we shouldn't be liking, but we do. Following a stressful period, the body can go into a recovery mode. And I would think almost every one of us have noticed that we've been really stressed out. Something has happened that has had us in a really high stress situation. And when it eases a little bit, we go into what we call a recovery mode. Most people, when they're super high stress, just can't sit down and eat a proper meal. And some people don't eat at all. But when your appetite comes back, all of a sudden you eat everything in sight. And I think a lot of people respond that way. But at the same time, that metabolic rate, your ability to turn food into energy, when you're in that recovery mode after high stress, it just drops down a little bit. And so we really get ourselves in a bundle with, when it comes to diet and nutrition. And I just want you to kind of remember that. I could spend a week on that one. So eat regularly. You've got a brain you need to keep healthy. And one of the ways to keep it healthy is to be using good glucose. When there's good glucose going on in your brain, it works at its best. Eat regularly through the day. This is a hard thing for us to remember when agriculture is in full swing, whether you're planting, whether it's calving season, it's harvest, you don't take time for a meal. but you've got to eat regularly through the day because those glucose levels are way up and down. And if you happen to be a diabetic in particular, this is crucial. Again, those healthy fats, those omega-3 fatty acids that we find in the good snacks, like in nuts and flax seeds and some of those granolas. Veggies and fruits. You all are in Michigan. You raise some of the best darn vegetables and fruits in the world up there. You know, practice what you raise, will you? High fiber foods have been really associated with greater alertness levels. And I think we find, if you just even think about the fact that if you eat a sandwich with with whole bread in it, that's really good for you, as opposed to a couple of donuts, the difference is amazing. Trade caffeine for more sleep, easier said than done, but it's a habit you need to get into. We all do. And stock up on healthy snacks. So when you're stuffing that stuff in your pocket to hop on the tractor, you're grabbing the right stuff. These are some of the ones, and look what's up there in top with blueberries. I wonder who grows blueberries. And some of these other things here. And fortunately, they're foods that most of us like. So I would be remiss if I didn't at least address a little bit about alcoholism. In rural communities, we know that alcohol is very prevalent. It's everywhere. And stress and alcohol do not make good partners. Drinking alcohol to relieve stress is a common practice. I think every one of us, myself included, said, oh, day is done. I can't wait for a glass of wine. That's, it's just how we're put together. But despite the fact that some of us think that drinking can help unwind, alcohol is not a coping mechanism. It does not stress, it's not effective in addressing stress. Yes, it does feel good to relax and have a glass of wine or a cold beer, but we need to be very careful about how much and when, because the physical effects of alcohol combined with stress can be so dangerous. And I think we've all witnessed that. And I think our rural communities, it's a habit that we get into a very young age. I wish I had the time to really have a conversation over this and learn from all of you as to how you are addressing this in your community. Because if we turn to alcohol every time there's a stressful situation, we will lose all of our natural coping skills. It just becomes our #1 coping skill instead of all the other things that we can do, the going for a walk, the having a conversation. And again, it's one of these things that's back and forth. If we're trying to use alcohol to relieve stress, that's what we turn to. It's back and forth, and when it's actually can increase our stress levels overall. When alcohol can initially help you fall asleep, it will reduce the quality of your sleep. So if you're waking up sometimes at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning and you're just feeling jittery, it could be because there's been maybe one more beer or one more glass of wine consumed than we probably should have. So you're not getting that deep restorative sleep that your brain health absolutely requires. The mixture of alcohol and caffeine, especially caffeinated those energy drinks, have been described as a perfect storm because it's combining a high pressure, which we've referred to as the stimulant in caffeine, with a low pressure with the depressive effect of alcohol. And it's just like there's this boxing match going on in your head. And it's hard to remember that one 12-ounce beer is the same amount of alcohol as a 5-ounce glass of wine or an 1.5 ounces of liquor. And it's a bit of a fallacy when you go out to eat and somebody say, what do you want to drink? Or do you want to drink? And say, no, I'll just have a glass of wine. It's just different amounts, and that's all we're looking at. And it's usually that the amount of alcohol that we consume that affects us more than the type. So it isn't necessarily that bourbon and water can have the same effect as a glass of wine or a cold beer. And according to public health, if we limit our intake to 2 drinks or less a day for men and 1 or less a day for women, that's what public health tells us we're supposed to be doing. And I will tell you, in most of our rural communities that I've been in, where I grew up, not the case. One of the other things to look at is caffeine. And caffeine and stress both elevate what we call cortisol levels. Cortisol is that kind of that natural hydrocortisone that we've got in our bodies. And it's like everything else. We need a little bit of cortisol, but too much of it is dangerous. And high amounts of caffeine will lead to those negative effects that we've been talking about if those cortisol levels are high for too long a period of time, like chronic stress, the day in, the day out. And it's small to moderate amounts of caffeine are great. A little cup of coffee in the morning is absolutely fine, or that Coke in the afternoon, but too much can also just put us in a real twit. And one of the health-wise, it increases our blood pressure. And if you have anybody that has any issues with hypertension, this can be a dangerous, dangerous situation for them. Your blood pressure can skyrocket in a hurry. And the other thing that I wanted to just address a little bit, and I think you've probably talked about this somewhat in your past presentations, is drug overuse. And usually we're talking about opioids. Opioids are those heavy duty painkillers. And we know that in farming, if we have a back injury, a shoulder injury, a knee, whatever, we've got to get back on that tractor. We've got to get back out in those fields. We do not have time to take an hour and a half to drive to a physical therapist, spend half an hour in physical therapy, and another hour, hour and a half to drive home. This is why people are skipping appointments, and we understand that. But the truth is, about 100 farmers or workers every day have injury issues, and 1 out of 5 will receive an opioid prescription for pain management. I used to work with an occupational health doctor, and he would prescribe opioids, but he had, I believe it was 2 days, and you were off of them, because he said they're so highly addictive. And this is before we even started looking at how addictive they really are. And overall, drug use in rural communities, most of the studies are showing that it's not as high when we think of drug overdose. We're thinking of the street drugs sometimes that we're thinking about in the bigger cities, but the overdose death rate is much higher than it is in urban communities. And it's because sometimes we're using stuff that is really, really dangerous. And farmers have a lot of access, not just to opioids, but to a lot of other chemicals. One of the things that we get into, and I've seen this with a lot of the farmers I've worked with, are what we call overuse headaches or rebound headaches, where we are consistently popping those medications for headache or for muscle tension to the point where we start get in a cycle where we're getting rebound headaches and migraine headaches. So there's all kinds of stuff that happens, but a whole lot of it has its root in our initial opioid use. It really does impact farming communities as much as we'd like to think not. And I'm taking this straight from Michigan State University Extension. I thought this piece was so important, I want to repeat it. 74% of farmers or farm workers have been impacted by opioid misuse. 26% have abused, been addicted, or taken an opioid without a prescription. In other words, borrowing it from a spouse or a neighbor. And that happens all the time. Excuse me. 77% of farmers or farm workers believe it would be easy to access opioid painkillers without a prescription. That is dangerous. It is dangerous not just for your work, but for your families, for people that are driving down the road. So I really like this. and I am stealing it and using it all over the place. And this is the document that I'm talking about. And I am hoping in your communities that this is popping up in the implement stores, in the churches, in any place where people have time to read this. Your rural health clinics should all have copies of this. It's well done. It has everything on one page that you really need to pay attention to. So thank you, Michigan, for this, because I stole it. Overall, substance abuse, there's all kinds of information out there that says that this cortisol that we ramp up in our brain can really damage the brain structure over time, really damage it. It really damages not just the structure, but the function of our brain when we have chronic stress. And it's why we need to look at so many different ways of trying to address the stress in our lives. Those regions of the brain that are related to memory and learning, some of the same parts that are impacted by drug abuse and addiction are negatively affected when we have those continual high levels of stress. So it is so important that for our brain health, our mental health, that we figure out which are the ways that we each individually can best address all of these things, and because how they're impacting us and how they impact us in turn impacts our family and our communities. One of the last things I just wanted to remind everybody is tobacco use. And I think in a lot of our communities, the smoking has gone down quite a bit. But unfortunately, what I'm seeing, at least around here, and I really don't know about Michigan, is the oral tobacco use. The chewing is still a big deal. And it's one of the areas where our young kids first get introduced to tobacco and nicotine. And smoking is not a long-term stress reliever, even though we think that first cigarette can really help. It doesn't solve the problems that are giving you your stress, that are at the root of your stress, because it will return. 5 minutes after you've had that cigarette, you're not going to feel any better. Nicotine addiction is a cause for stress. Cravings for nicotine can get so stressful that your body, you get into that withdrawal, and you know anybody that's tried to quit smoking, there's the withdrawal, and it's horrible. So what do? You go back and have another cigarette. If you are a smoker, I really urge you to try to do the best things that you have at your fingertips, just either slow down or quit, because the impact on your heart, on your lungs, and your blood pressure, and your brain are going to take a toll at some point in time. That nicotine that is used through chewing tobacco is just as addictive, if not more. And we all know that smoking is a cancer-causing agent. Chew is a huge cancer-causing agent, and oral cancer in our rural communities is significant. So many people who are trying to quit have started a practice of what they call mindfulness. And that's kind of that stop, breathe, think, and it's a process. But if you can learn how to get into mindfulness, where you stop, you just think about it for a while, you get into your deep breathing. Sometimes this has been really effective in cutting down, at least, on the amount of smoking. So we're urging people to give it a shot. Okay. Overall impact, stress is normal in our lives. So there's a little bit of it's good for us. Sometimes we need to get out of a dangerous situation. And our body's designed to react that way, that fight or flight response, sometimes to save your life. But it has serious consequences if it's continuous and without any break in it or any rest or relaxation activity. So spend time with your family and friends. Even with COVID, figure out a way to do it. Develop relaxation techniques, yoga, Tai Chi, all of these things. And I am amazed at the number of people in agriculture that are taking on these routines. Exercise regularly, get out and walk. Restorative sleep. I wish I had a band to play a song about restorative sleep, but it is so important to us. I've found that music is great therapy. Read whatever interests you. I don't care if it's a sports magazine, if it's historical novels, if it's romance, now whatever it takes to take your mind off of things and just kind of put yourself someplace else for a little bit. Meditation, reflection, for many people that are faith-based, prayer has really helped them. Walking, swimming, go swing a golf club in the backyard, something to just really get out there and break that stress for a little bit. Go hug somebody somewhere where it's COVID acceptable anyway, but that's getting better. And laugh. We just know that we need a good laugh every once in a while. I mean, who can't smile when you look at little babies? And these are some of the resources that I've used. We have at AgriSafe have a lot of resources. If you go to agrisafe.org, you'll find several. Some of the rest of these are ones that are from the CDC, from NIOSH, from some really reputable publications. So that's where I go when I need information. And this is us. This is our total farmer health piece that I told you that we use. And you can see that we understand that in this country, over 90%, over 95% of farming is done in family farms. So everything we do comes back to that farm family in one way or another. And with that, I am turning this back to Kate. And thank you very much for listening to me. And you take care of Michigan. It's gorgeous.